Welcome back to the Protecting Homeowners Podcast. I'm Marc Dann.
Welcome to the first installment of Dann Law on Foreclosure, the Homeowners Podcast. And we're here to help homeowners and borrowers understand better what they need to do to protect themselves in the event that they fall behind in their mortgage or other circumstances arise that causes them to find themselves at risk of losing their home in foreclosure. Joining me on this podcast is our team of whom I'm all very proud. The foreclosure defense team at Dann Law. Whitney Castor is a experienced lawyer who kind of is the tip of the spear when it comes to litigating cases. She is both lawyer and counselor to all of our clients. And so I want to welcome Whitney. Whitney, can you share a little bit about your background and your qualifications, like where you went to law school, all those kinds of things?
Sure. I'm originally from the Warren Youngstown area. I graduated from Youngstown State University. And I simultaneously worked at General Motors during that period of time. I want to say I was at General Motors about 10 years. And then they offered the buyouts. So I left General Motors and went to law school in Michigan. I went to Thomas Cooley, Michigan, or Thomas Cooley Law School. Lived in Lansing, Michigan for 3 years. Came back to Cleveland, Ohio. Lived in the Detroit Shoreway area with my husband for several years. And at that time, I was practicing primarily in domestic relations law, but was pretty miserable. And I ran into Marc Dann, who was a friend and a colleague that I'd known for years. And he said, why don't you come to a continuing legal education class about mortgage servicing violations? Which sounded so exciting. I broke my legs to be there. It was quite the experience. But I went and listened, and I thought this was very interesting, and I loved the fact that it was helpful in the sense that the reason I went to law school was that I wanted to help people. And when I came out and thought I would be so helpful in domestic relations law, and did not find that kind of satisfaction, I thought, well, why not give this a try? So Marc Dann invited me to come over and join his team. I started pretty much as almost like I would say a glorified paralegal. And now, I take care of all the foreclosure defense in Ohio. So it's been a wild and fun ride. And I enjoy my job, and I enjoy helping people. And this was, I'm living the dream. So literally.
Right. And we are, unlike a lot of firms, we, in our Ohio foreclosure defense practice, we're all over the state. So I believe we've had cases in all 88 counties at this point, over the past 15 years, at least collectively, that we have. So.
Yes. Every once in a while, one throws me for a loop.
Right.
And I have to look it up.
Right. So, and Andy Engel handles our more complicated litigation when it comes to foreclosure related cases and real estate issues in general. He's obviously very experienced, but I'll let him tell you what his background and experience is.
Thank you, Marc. Yes, I've earned all these gray hairs. I'm from the southwest part of the state, originally from the Dayton area, and went to law school at the American University in Washington, D.C., and graduated far longer ago than I care to admit. My practice has always involved some degree of real estate and consumer litigation. But in the the late 90s, I got involved in a lot of predatory lending litigation. And that led into foreclosure defense in the wake of the mortgage crisis. I've been involved at the appellate level quite a bit in Ohio, and for good or ill, I've been involved in many, if not most, of the major appellate cases in the state regarding foreclosure and consumer rights in foreclosure. Something Whitney said kind of resonates with me. This is a practice area that I feel good about every morning when I wake up and want to go to work, because our clients are getting treated unfairly in a system that is supposed to be all about fairness. So I believe what we do is very important, and I love doing it every day.
And then, Andy, you've raised a bunch. So, it doesn't sound very appealing, but Andy has handled probably more appeals in this field than anybody in the state. He not only has he handled appeals of his own cases, but other lawyers bring their cases to us, and particularly to Andy, to litigate their appeals. And he has been part of, along with all of us here, a number of amicus briefs in support of cases that legal aid has brought to the Ohio Supreme Court, involving very important issues in foreclosure defense. And part of the reason that borrowers who are facing foreclosure have strong due process protections in Ohio is because of the work that Andy has done. And I'm very proud that he was willing to join with us and work together with us. We're all stronger together. So I'm glad that Andy's here. And you raised some other issues that I think we'll be able to get into either today or in a future podcast. So, and then Karen Ortiz is our loan modification specialist and paralegal extraordinaire. And why don't you share with us how you came to be part of this team?
Hello. So I became part of this team back in 2021. And prior to that, I had a very long career in restaurant food service, back of house. I ended up losing my job through no fault of my own twice in less than a year, and decided I've got to go to school and do something. I want to make a difference. Due to my age, I knew law school wasn't available. So I decided to become a paralegal. And took me 5 years to get through school while taking one class at a time at nights and weekends. I graduated, and now I'm here with these fine folks. And my favorite thing to do is yell at people for the mortgage servicers and save the house for the clients.
Right. Well, and Karen, Karen's humble, but she knows the mortgage servicing guidelines for FHA and VA and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
She's a nerd.
She's a real nerd. She better than any AI program that I've bumped into yet. Now they're certainly building better AI programs and trying to compete with her. But we are very fortunate to have Karen's help, and our clients are extremely fortunate in her one of her many roles here. But perhaps her most important role is that she essentially helps people keep their home. By making sure that the applications that are made for mortgage assistance are compliant with those rules, holding the mortgage loan servicers accountable when they fail to do that, making sure that we get maximum information so that we go into those negotiations with much more information than almost anybody else that I know of that helps people get their loans modified. And her success rate is outstandanding. So we're very fortunate too. I think we should probably, we're starting this today. So, what we try to do for clients who come into our firm for representation in foreclosure are three things. One is, we defend the legal proceeding that's going on in your life. And in Ohio, that's a judicial foreclosure action that's being filed. It's a lawsuit like any other lawsuit. And in fact, thanks to the work that Andy and Whitney have done over the years, courts are starting to treat it much more like other kinds of lawsuits that are filed. Borrowers who are in default on their mortgage, whether it's through or not in default, but somebody thinks that they are, they have all kinds of due process rights that need to be protected and asserted in the process. And what people don't really understand is that the process is not self-executing at all. It requires you to avail yourself of that due process of law, because if you don't, even though it exists and the courts are in theory supposed to be there to protect you from wrongful foreclosures, what happens in the real world is that these cases go directly to default and then get scheduled for sheriff sales pretty quickly, and the case is over. And 30 days after that, even your ability to appeal that decision is gone, and your rights are very limited. Now, this team has taken on some cases that were well past that problem, but if you can do anything you can do to keep yourself and get yourself to a lawyer as early as possible in the process, there are things we can do late in the process, and we've made some law here that I'm also pretty pleased about to help unwind foreclosures that took place where people weren't represented and weren't in a position to assert their rights for good reasons. And we've brought those good reasons to the court's attention, and we've been able to get the courts to reopen the courthouse door and let us in. But it is absolutely critical. So the first thing we do is that looks like a strange thing on the screen there. First thing we do is defend the foreclosure. We play defense. The next thing we do is we take a really close look at what your loan servicer is doing to see if they've played by all the rules. Because in 2008, after the financial crisis, Congress enacted something called, they created something called the CFPB. And they assigned to the CFPB, and we can talk, we'll have other future conversations about what's going on there, because that's interesting and relevant to people who are homeowners and borrowers who are facing foreclosure. But for now, the CFPB was created, and it was assigned to oversee some laws that are very important to borrowers who own homes and who have mortgaged the property that their home is located on as security for that loan. One is the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, which has been broadly expanded by the CFPB to include mortgage servicers, not just originators of loans, which is very important. Secondly, the Truth in Lending Act is another part of another consumer protection law that was transferred to the oversight of the CFPB. And under RESPA and TILA, as we like to call them around here, the CFPB has issued basically a rule book for, not basically, an actual rule book for how lawyers and, how mortgage servicers are supposed to behave. And I know many of you watching this will be surprised to hear that these big companies don't follow those rules in the way they should all the time. And so the second thing we do is we take a very deep dive, and everybody on this in this group is involved in this analysis into what mistakes that mortgage servicer might have made. Did they properly apply your payments? Did they calculate your taxes and insurance payment through escrow properly? Did they communicate with you in all the ways that they're supposed to communicate with you when you started to fall behind on your loan? Did they respond to you when you asked them for help? There's a long list that we'll be asking. So it sounds like we're going to be, asking you a lot of questions when you if you decide to retain us, or even if we're deciding whether or not to offer you the ability to retain us. But that's because we want to see what's available. And look, as I believe Vince Lombardi used to say, the best offense is a good defense. So we get the defense locked in, and then we start to build that offense by looking at what claims we can bring against the servicer. And the mortgage industry has become quite complicated over the years, because the person that's collecting the payments isn't necessarily the person to whom you owe the money. So that we and in the industry and kind of in our office, we refer to the people to whom the money is owed as the investors, and the people collecting the money, which are really just collection agents, as servicers. And things have changed dramatically in the 16 or 17 years that I've been doing this work, and Andy's been doing it even longer. Is that when I started doing this, almost every mortgage was serviced by a bank, a brick and mortar bank. Remember the drive-through windows where you'd get a lollipop if you had kids in the car, and even if you didn't sometimes, and the teller liked you. But banks that had reputational risk, they got caught up in a really ugly way during the financial crisis in 2008. And so what has happened since then is that 70% or so of mortgage servicing has now shifted away from those brick and mortar traditional banks that also want your checking account and your savings account and your business loans, to what are called non-bank servicers. And this is a bunch of companies that nobody's ever heard of. And suddenly you'll get a notice, which is, by the way, part of what you agree to when you sign up for most mortgage loans in the United States is that the servicing of that loan can be transferred without your consent. And this is confusing to a lot of people. So sometimes people will fall behind simply because one day their loan's being serviced by Wells Fargo or PNC Bank, and the next day they get a notice saying that that PHH is their servicer, and you should send your thousands of dollars of payments to them every month, and all you get is a letter in the mail. And with all the fraud that's out there, with all the AI and all the things that people worry about in these kind of situations, it's something that people are skeptical about and should be. But not just because it's somebody new. It's because these companies, most of them are backed by hedge funds. They're very thinly capitalized, and they use very poorly paid people doing very complicated work. And so they make mistakes all the time.
And Mark,
Andy,
let me interject here. Because one of the things you pointed out a moment ago, I think is very important, certainly about the way we do things here at Dann Law, which is we take each case on its own facts and its own situation. This is not a cookie cutter type of practice. It can't be to be effective at all. You have to look at the individual facts and litigate. From my position, when I litigate, I have to litigate individual cases. I can't just assume that it's the same issue that we saw last week and it's somebody else's loan. So at least for speaking for myself, I look at each case very thoroughly on an individual basis.
And honestly, that's why we charge a little bit more than other firms. So we'll say it right out there. But honestly, there's probably not an area in the world of law where you get what you pay for more than when it comes to mortgage foreclosure defense, because so many people think they can do it like a commodity and do the same thing over and over again for people, including, and again, this is probably the topic for a future podcast. There are firms out there that aren't even lawyers that are telling you they can do certain things for you. I mean, Andy recently and Whitney came across a situation where this one firm out of which we're trying to find them, but I think they're out of Texas, actually filed claims in court for people without their permission, and filed bankruptcies, put people in bankruptcy without their permission. And so the second thing we do is we figure out whether you have claims. Again, to get back to our agenda, is we figure out whether there are claims against the servicers. And again, these are all subjects that you tell us what you want to know about, and we'll respond. But we're going to build these out over the coming weeks and months. Then the last thing we do is we try to come up with a solution. And Karen Ortiz is the solution lady in our office. So Karen, why don't you kind of explain what we do? But let me tell you what I think it is, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. But Karen helps put together applications so that people can work out a modification of their loan, if that's a possibility. based on the rules and that the servicers and the investors set forward. Is that a fair characterization?
Somewhat, but I don't follow any of the rules the servicers set forward because they're all wrong. I follow the rules of the guidelines and Respatila. Pretty much, you're going to speak to me, whether it be via email, phone, video chat, more than you will your attorney, because I'm the one who needs to know everything that has happened in your life since you defaulted and probably 6 months prior to the default. We then take depending on whether your loan is FHA, VA, Fannie or Freddie, will depend how we approach applying for a modification and what the guidelines are. As of now, you can only have an FHA modification one every 24 months. Fannie and Freddie are currently one every 12 months, but you only get 3 total in a lifetime. One more important thing to note is the VA partial claim. As soon as that program's up and running, that is only effective for 5 years, starting from the enactment date in June, and you get 1 partial claim per life of the loan. So these are all very technical and important things to know, and we go over them with a fine-tooth comb, and then I speak to Whitney.
I told you, folks, she's a nerd, and that's the type of person you want in Karen's position.
That's right. That's right. So she's the solution person for us. So just to summarize, and then we've run out of time, believe it or not, for the first episode. One, we defend and make sure that nobody takes your house, and that you avail yourself of all the due process of law that's out there. 2, we figure out whether you have claims against the servicer or somebody else. There are also people that try to intervene in foreclosure situations that have to be sued sometimes and brought into these cases, and so we bring those claims as well. And then 3rd, we focus on a resolution that's going to be to your benefit. I think next week we'll talk about the difference between whether to file bankruptcy or to defend foreclosures, because that is a solution that's available to our clients as well, and that we make available to our clients. But what you'll find is that there are 2 flavors of lawyers that you find when you're facing foreclosure. One is a foreclosure defense lawyer, and the other is a bankruptcy lawyer. It's almost like if you go to a carpenter, he or she will build you a wood house, and you go to a bricklayer and he or she will build you a brick house. If you go to a bankruptcy lawyer, you're almost always going to end up in a bankruptcy. If you go to a foreclosure defense lawyer, you're almost always going to end up in a foreclosure. One of the things that I think makes us different here is that we don't do it that way. We look carefully at what's best for you as the client, and then we guide you based on what's going to, at the end of the day, keep you in your house, keep your payments as low as possible, and make it make sense. Or if you need to exit your house, to make that exit as smooth as possible. And for some people, that means a bankruptcy. For some people, that means working with Karen to get a loan modified. For some people, it means we fight it out in court because at the end of the day, we'll have a much stronger position than you do going in. And we'll explore all those things in the coming weeks and months. I appreciate people who took time to watch this, and we will be back with much more information for you, at least on a weekly basis, about being a homeowner in Ohio and how to protect your rights. Thank you, Andy, Karen, Whitney. Thank you very much.